Hi everyone. I wanted to talk to you about the Module 5 assignment, the Annotated Bibliography, Part 2. You've already done Part 1, and the synthesis. So in doing that, I wanted to talk about not the whole description. I'll leave it up to you to read the whole description yourself, but to point out 2 or 3 things that I really want to make sure that you paid attention to. First is that you're going to create your annotated bibliography composed of 7 articles this time instead of 5. You will use the instructions from set 1 in terms of actually setting up, how you do your annotations and that sort of thing. Maximum 1 page each, double spaced, all of that sort of thing. But you will be doing that for 7 articles this time instead of the 5 that you did in Part 1. And only 2 of the 7 articles may be from a professional journal or another source of information like a ministry research report. Now notice the word research there. So I'm not talking about a ministry policy. I'm not talking about a ministry directive. I'm talking about a report that comes from the ministry based on research around a particular issue. Secondly, when you, in part 2 of the assignment, which is the synthesis, you're going to be using 7 of the most helpful, and I'll leave that up to you to decide which are the most helpful, of the 12 in total that you put together for parts 1 and parts 2 of the annotations. So you've got 12 annotations by the time you've done part 1 of this assignment and of course the last assignment. So of those 12, which 7 are you going to use for your synthesis? And you'll make that decision probably based on a few things that we'll talk about in a minute, but you're going to be using 7 of those articles. You're going to synthesize those 7 articles in relation to one another and to your potential research topic, issue, problem. So it's sort of 2 barrels. That is, we're not just talking about it in relation to one another, but we're also talking about in relation to the question that you're pursuing or the issue that you're pursuing in your research. So keep that in mind, please. And you'll include no more than 1 professional journal in this synthesis. So while you can have 2 professional journals or ministry research reports for your annotations, you can only use 1 professional journal in this synthesis or ministry research report if you choose that. And last, at the conclusion of your synthesis, you're going to consider the articles you've annotated for your synthesis, but then make note of what seems to be missing from the literature or what gaps exist in the literature that you need to address so that you can have enough support information for your research. And your synthesis should conclude with a short section of gaps to fill in my literature review. And this will serve a couple of purposes. Pardon me. First of all, it will identify for you what you need to be looking for in a perhaps wider literature search. Maybe get the librarians involved in that if you're having trouble finding more around those gaps that you've identified, so that you're well prepared and you have some ideas for the kinds of literature that you're going to add to your list of resources when you get to the summer and you're working on your literature review for your actual research project. So that will help you with that, and it will also help you identify what gap your own research is going to be filling in the literature that actually exists. So there are a couple of things that it will help you with. The synthesis format will be a maximum of 5 pages, so that means tight writing, it means well-edited writing, it means no going off in a tangent writing. It means no repetition writing. It means that you're really careful with every word that you put in your synthesis so that every word is contributing to the meaning of what it is that you're exploring, because 5 pages double-spaced is not a whole lot of space to do what you're being asked to do here. And that's on purpose so that you will learn to really tighten up your writing so that it doesn't have a lot of unnecessary stuff in there. And I'll give you an example. It's kind of out of context in a way, but a lot of you in the annotations started off with your reference at the top. So all of All of the authors are listed at the top. And then you began your annotations by saying something like, the authors X and Y and Z and A and B in full names, and often with their designation as well, Professor so-and-so and so-and-so, considered the question of blah, 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 blah. So you've used almost 2 sentences probably, space, with just naming the researchers, which are already named at the top. Now their first name isn't there, but that doesn't matter. In academic writing, you might meet them at a conference, but you don't necessarily need their first name and all that stuff. You just need to know who they are. We don't need to know that they're a professor, an associate professor, or anything like that. Their article has been vetted by experts in the field, and therefore what they've written is considered to be contributing to the field. So you don't need all of that information. So I use that as an example. So don't add a whole lot of extra stuff that really isn't necessary or already exists somewhere else. That's, that kind of repetition is just not helpful. So a synthesis, what is it? Well, a synthesis is something that's greater than the sum of its parts. So the Preppy Baker is somebody I sometimes watch, and I think that's the name of the YouTube show, and makes lots of delicious things. In this picture, they've actually demonstrated all of the ingredients that go into a carrot cake, into their recipe for a carrot cake. And then beside it is the carrot cake. Now, when you look at that carrot cake, you're not thinking to yourself, ooh, carrots and white sugar and dark sugar and confectioner's sugar and applesauce and baking powder and oil and raisins and all of those, cinnamon and all that sort of thing. You're looking at that cake and thinking, cake. It's become a whole thing unto itself. Yes, it's made up of all kinds of different parts, but it has become a whole thing unto itself. And that's what the synthesis does. It is not a list of ingredients. It is not author A says such and such about X, author B says such and such about X, but author A and B say something about X, but author Z disagrees and suggests that blah, 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 blah. However, author M brings the arguments around this issue together when they say blah, blah, blah. Okay, so in that way, you're kind of bringing all those ideas together and making them, you're bringing some of them together to make something that is enlightening, that causes you to think differently about an issue or causes you to think more deeply or whatever it happens to be. So that's what a synthesis does. So it's not a list of things. It's rather a bringing together of ideas in ways that are going to deepen understanding. So how are we going to do this synthesis? Well, while you're doing your readings, and after you picked your 7, while you're reading through them pretty carefully, you'll be making notes about various key ideas that the authors bring up. Now here, we're probably not going to be talking methodologically, but conceptually, although methodologically may be a part of it. So you're going to, what do they say about the thing that they're exploring? What do we understand about this thing that they're exploring after we've read the article, perhaps that we didn't know before? What context did they use, etc., etc. So you'll put all those key ideas down for each of the readings. So you've kind of developed a whole series of themes. You can do this with sticky notes. You can do it on a special computer program if your mind works better that way. You can do it on big sheets of paper, however you want to do it. And then you're going to go through it and you're going to start saying, this author and this author and this author all talked about X. And that is sufficient. There's sufficient information there now to say, yes, there's a theme here that's emerged out of the reading, and you identify that theme. And in order, as you do that, you're going to be filling in perhaps a chart or something that's going to help you organize all of this information. And in this chart, for example, we have, by the way, the top URL here, the Simply Psychology URL, it actually goes through this in the article. So it won't just be me talking about it, but you'll be able to read about it as well. Both of these articles are really helpful in putting together a synthesis, so I would suggest you have a look through them. But anyway, so you'll be able to, identify where all of this fits on this chart so that as you're writing, you have that information in front of you. So when you're putting all of this information together then in the synthesis, of course, all of that we've talked about is prior to even pulling your computer out to write your paper. You're going to have organized your sources, and then you're going to outline the structure. So you've identified a bunch of themes, but logically or conceptually, what do you think you should be exploring first? Or how do the themes relate to one another, for example? So there are various ways in which you can approach it, and and whatever you decide, you're going to then outline a structure. So I suggest you do that separately from writing your paper. And it always helps to have that so that you kind of don't wander off the beaten track, but you know what it is that you want to say. And then you use paragraph structures to organize ideas for your reader. You use paragraphs to help the reader and help you in writing your paper as well. So when you write paragraphs, a paragraph is not a catch-all. It is not a grab bag. It's not just a collection of ideas. Rather, a paragraph is exploring one idea, and you'll introduce that idea with a topic sentence. And I would suggest that you have a look at this article from Harvard, or this URL from Harvard, which talks about topic sentences and signposting. It's really an excellent article and well worth the time to just kind of up your writing. If you struggle with writing at all, it's particularly important to pay attention to some of these resources because they really will help you organize your ideas in a more accessible and worthwhile way. So once you've pulled together your paper and pulled those ideas together, you're not done. You're going to then go back through and revise. I think actually I should have done this theme perhaps a little bit earlier, because then the other ideas flow from it a little bit better. So you move things around, and computers, of course, make that so much easier to do. And then you edit again. Does this make sense? And then you edit for, and yes, it does. I like this organization much better. Now I'm going to edit for grammatical errors. I'm going to edit for spelling errors. I'm going to edit for making sure that my sentences are complete. I'm going to edit for making sure that my ideas are clearly expressed. I'm going to edit for repetition, unnecessary repetition, etc., etc. So you're going to edit carefully. And then you're going to, whoops, my mouse is really sensitive. Anyway, you're going to proofread your paper. This is the next to final edit. Maybe there's 2 or 3 little small things that need to be taken care of. And then you're going to do your final check. Does my paper respond to what the description and rubrics say I should have done? That's important. Does my title page, I'm going to add my title page to this whole assignment. That will go at the very front of the annotations. I'm going to make sure that my references for my synthesis, which it will have to have its own set of references, that they're complete and they're accurate and they're, properly done according to APA 7th edition. All that's done, then you hand in your paper. So I know I'm going on and on about writing here, but I think at this point, it's really important that these become habits. If they aren't already, and I know for many of you they already are, but if they aren't already, just make sure that you're including editing time in the time that you put aside for writing papers. So that, you know, I'm not having to do a whole lot of editing on your paper when I hand it back to you. It will become really helpful having that skill when you get into doing your research project, because you're going to be editing many times. And students are always surprised at how many edits actually go into something like your research project. But so get in the habit of doing it now, and that will help you in the long stead. So I hope I haven't gone on too long about all of this, that this is helpful to you. And if you have any questions at all about this assignment, either part of it, or anything else, just let me know, and I'll be happy to share any ideas that I have. Take care.